Hi, my name is Brian Caparici, and I've been a professional wedding and portrait photographer for over 14 years now. One of the things that I've always enjoyed doing, both as a photographer, as a creative, but also as an entrepreneur, is finding, what I find to be, for me, the best way of doing something, and then helping other photographers learn that as well. So I teach business and productivity and photography to photographers, but I also have a software company called Sprout Studio, and we started Sprout Studio, or I started Sprout Studio because of that same need, that desire to help photographers be efficient in their workflow. And so Sprout Studio is this tool that photographers can use to run their wedding and portrait photography business from start to scratch in the most efficient way possible. But today, what I want to show you is what I've found to be the most efficient way to scan your film negatives. So maybe you're a film photographer and you develop your own stuff at home, and you want to learn how to get through that scanning process quicker, because it can sometimes be very monotonous. It can be very time consuming. Or maybe you're a film photographer and you're getting your negatives developed at a lab, but you want to have more control over that scanning process. Or maybe you just found some old negatives in a shoebox and you want to digitize them. Wherever you fall on that spectrum, I want to walk you through what I found to be the most efficient way and the quickest way to scan your negatives and to get them on the computer so that you can share them, you can archive them, so on and so forth. So there's 4 things that you're going to need in order to digitize your negatives. Now, of course, we're talking today about digitizing with a camera as opposed to digitizing with a flatbed scanner. Maybe I'll make a whole other video on why I prefer, DSLR scanning versus flatbed scanning. But that's what this specific video is today. So the 4 things that you need. The first one is going to be you need a digital camera with a macro lens or with an extension tube with a normal lens, whatever makes sense. You have to get in close. So a digital camera with a macro lens or some macro setup on it. Number 2 is you're going to need something to hold that digital camera parallel with the film that you're going to be photographing. Number 3, you need something to hold that film so that it stays still and you can photograph it. And number 4, something to shine light through that negative so that you can photograph it properly and then reverse it on the computer. So those are the 4 things that you're going to need. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk you through my exact setup. I'm going to walk you through all the equipment that I use, and I'm going to walk you through the exact workflow that I use and how I can get an entire 35mm roll of film, 36 exposures, scanned, digitized, exported from Lightroom in about 5 minutes. So we're here in my office, and this is sort of my little, digitizing rig here. And I want to just walk you through the actual equipment and the setup that I'm using in order to digitalize my scans or my negatives as quick as possible. And then I'm going to walk you through actually doing it and talk you through settings and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing that I mentioned that you need is a camera with a macro lens. So I'm using my Fuji X-T3 with the 60mm f2.4 macro lens. I've tried other lenses. I've got a whole bunch of them. I'm a wedding photographer, and so the Fuji X-T3 is what I use. I've tried my other lenses with extension tubes on it, and I've just found that I get the best quality out of my Fuji macro lens. And this is, the original macro lens. It's nothing crazy. It's not even really that expensive, but it is, it's a great quality macro lens. So that's what I use. The second thing that you need is something to hold the camera parallel to the film. And so I'm using a Kaiser copy stand. I use this over a tripod because it's a permanent setup. It's got this base here, it's got the arm. I can go up and down on this. So if I'm photographing 35mm, I leave it here. But if I'm photographing 120, I just unscrew the back here, raise it up, and then clamp it in there, and I'm good to go. So there's 2 spots on this copy stand that I have to kind of remember, but that's basically it. So it's nice and easy. It holds a parallel. There's no concerns. Very simple to use. So I love that. The third thing that I mentioned that you need to be using is something to hold and to advance your negatives as you're putting your negative there to photograph it. This right here, honestly, is my secret weapon in being able to get this whole process done quickly. So this is the negative supply Mark 1 film carrier. This one right here is actually a beta unit, but I ordered one. I backed their Kickstarter. I actually got the Pro mount, so it's got little brushes at the end, and it'll actually remove dust and hair and all that as you advance it. But basically, you put an uncut strip of film in here, and you just advance it with this little wheel. You advance it, picture, advance it, picture, advance it, picture, and it's the fastest thing that I've found to use. And so, for what you pay for this, well worth the time that you save. Now this is for 35mm. For 120, because this doesn't come in 120 yet, although they're making one, I use this, which is the Digitalize, the Lomography Digitalize film carrier. You basically, you know, put your film in here, and it opens up. Where is it? There it is. Opens up, and then you basically clamp it with this little magnet system, and then you remove the magnet, and everything is, you know, held nice and flat. So that's a great system too. But again, this negative supply film carrier, the Mark I, it's so much faster, and so it's worth it for me in order to get this stuff done a lot quicker, because I want to spend more time behind my camera, not behind my computer, right? So the last thing that you're going to want, again, is the a light table. So I'm using, this is a Kaiser Slim Light Plano. I'm going to put the links for all this down below so you can get it all, but this is just a small little, you know, 8.5 by 11 light table. Good to go, and it does what it needs to do. It lights the negative from behind, and you're good to go. So this is basically my setup. I shoot tethered. I'm using Lightroom, so my computer's right here. I'll walk you through all that in just a moment, but this is basically kind of a quick run through on the actual equipment that I'm using to digitalize my film scan, or my film negatives. Okay, so let's walk through the whole workflow here. So I've basically got my strip of film here. It's uncut, and that's how I feed it through the negative supply film carrier. So I basically, you know, feed it through here. There's a little slot on the side. You feed it through, and you just kind of push it through there. You get it started, and then it catches, and then once it catches, there we are. So now I can just advance the film this way, and that's basically how I use the negative supply film carrier. So I'm basically advancing it, taking a picture, advancing it, taking a picture, and going through that whole process there. And that's how I can get it done so quickly. There's no messing around, there's no opening things, closing things, you know, resetting things. It's all there, it's all set up, and it's all good to go. Now let's talk about the camera itself. So again, I'm using the X-T3. I do this with the screen flipped out this way, and I'm actually shooting tethered right onto my computer in Lightroom, and so I'm not even taking a picture with the camera. I'm not pressing the shutter here. I actually, when I do this, I'll have my mouse just off to the side over here, and I'll basically, you know, advance the film, take a picture, advance the film, and by taking a picture, I'm just using my finger on the mouse over here. So let's just quickly walk through sort of what I'm doing here in terms of settings on the camera here. So I've got this all set up, and I'm just going to show you kind of why I have things set up on my screen a certain way. I keep my grids turned on, and I do that because I want to actually line up the edge of the film with one of the lines so that on every single image it is consistent, right? So as I move it over, you can see here I sort of line up that line on my grid with the edge of the negative. And so that way, when I go to crop it on the computer, I can basically crop one of them and apply it to every single one of them, and they're all gonna be the exact same. So that's another great benefit, obviously, of the negative supply film carrier, because it holds everything consistent. The tops and the bottoms will always be the same, and as long as I line up this line here with the edge of the negative for each one, it makes that the same for every single image. So I do that. I also keep my level turned on here, just so that I can see that I'm level. I know that I am level with this copy stand, but I like to do it just so I can see it. Let's talk about settings on the camera. So I'm shooting this at f8. I shoot all of this at f8. That is what I have found through experimenting to be the best setting for digitalizing with this camera. I'm photographing at my native ISO on this camera, which is ISO 160. So I've got that set, and I basically just set my shutter speed to give me the histogram that I need. So I've got my histogram displayed here, and I basically want to keep it clumped in the middle, the histogram clumped in the middle, a little bit to the right side. So you're looking at this reversed because I have the camera upside down. So you want this a little bit to this side. So as you can see here, something like this would be, in my opinion, too dense, looking at the histogram there. So I would do something more like this. in terms of the histogram. And for the most part, I keep my shutter speed the same for every image, unless the density on one of the images in the negative is very, very different, then I'll change it, but otherwise I more or less keep this the same. So yeah, I mean, I basically do that. I manual focus. So again, all manual exposure, all manual focus. I zoom in like this 100%, and I'm focusing on the grain. So I'll just kind of rock back and forth, do the focus, you know, there we go. Focus on the grain, and there we go. It's important to notice that you don't want to focus on what's supposed to be in focus in the picture necessarily. You want to get the grain in focus, because the picture itself might not be in focus the way that you photographed it. So you want to focus on the grain, not the actual, you know, person in the photograph. And that's basically it in terms of like my camera settings. I have this turned on for electronic shutter, so there's no camera shake at all, and I can basically just go and do my thing. Okay, I want to walk you through the light table and sort of the whole setup that I have going here. So again, this is the negative supply Mark 1. So again, like as I, you know, put the negative in here, I take my picture, I advance. I take my picture, I advance. I take my picture, I advance. So it's nice and simple and easy. One of the most important things that you have to do, like, so I've got these little strips of cardboard on here, of poster board. This is what I see a lot of photographers doing when they're digitalizing. And in fact, I did this for the longest time, and I was frustrated with my results because I was getting, especially with color photography, I was getting just really inconsistent results. And it's because all of this light here is now, you know, filling into the camera. It's causing reflection. The lens is reflecting on the negative. There's a whole bunch of bleed that's happening. It's just all around a really bad situation. So you want to mask off any of the light that you're not using. So I've just got these little strips of poster board that I just literally just kind of makeshift. And I'm sure, you know, eventually I'll have something a bit more permanent, but you know, I just kind of place those around it. I've got 3 of them. I place it around it just to kind of do that and mask off. Oh, I've got this one in reverse, to mask off, you know, most of the stray light. So there's no other light flying around. When I am actually digitalizing, and if I'm actually doing a roll, I would also shut off all the lights in the room. So it would be pitch dark in the room except for this light source right here. In fact, here you can see this is actually what the room looks like when I'm digitalizing. So I've got the light table on here, everything is masked off, and that's it. I'm you know, taking my picture with the mouse over here and then advancing, taking the picture, advancing, taking the picture, and advancing, and that's it. There's no light bleeding on here. There's no other stray light that's going to cause color shifts. This is it. This is the room, nice and dark, but you get through it really quickly. As I have photographed the images and they're coming in here into Lightroom, again, like they automatically come in. I'm shooting tethered. I automatically apply a preset. I've turned it off for now, just so I can manually walk through it. So there's ways to be even more efficient than what I'm about to show you. But this is basically how the image comes into Lightroom. And so what I do initially is you need to basically reset everything. So I need to get the image back to like sort of a 0 state. I've got auto settings that automatically come into my camera, just because, again, I'm a wedding photographer, and so I've got, you know, some presets and stuff. So I have a little preset that I've built, and this is the one that gets automatically applied. It's just called film scanning black and white. So I just click that, and it basically just like zeroes out everything. So there's no tone curve, there's no color profile. It's all just, you know, sitting there at a 0 state. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I'll do is I'll grab the little white balance tool here, and I will do a white balance off of the mask around the edge here, so around the border, sorry, of the film. So that way it kind of sets this image again to like a, you know, a zeroed out state. And this is what Negative Lab Pro recommends doing. So I'll walk you through using Negative Lab Pro in just a moment. The next thing I'll do is I'll basically crop in so that I only have the image showing. So press the crop button here, and I just kind of bring in one side first, and then bring in the other corner. Oh, a little jumpy. There we go. And bring it down. And there we go. And then I just go back into library mode. So I've cropped it, it's all good to go. Now what I would have done is I would have scanned or you know, digitalized, taken pictures of all 36 images on that roll of film. I would have selected all of them and then done what I just did on one of them, and it would have auto applied those to every single other image. So the cropping, the resetting, all of that would have been done at the same time. So now I've got this image, this is just the negative, it's zeroed out, it's set, it's ready to go, and now I will run Negative Lab Pro. Now I'm not gonna do a full walkthrough of Negative Lab Pro, so I'll open up Negative Lab Pro, and I just have this set, so DSLR scan, and this is a black and white, so I'm just setting a black and white. Pre-saturation doesn't matter. I leave the border buffer here at 10%, good to go, and I press convert. And again, if I'm doing the entire roll, then I would have done that, you know, for all of them, and it would have applied the settings and the conversion to every single one. And there you go. So that's how Negative Lab Pro looks right out of the gate. And that negative looks pretty darn good to me right out of the gate. I might, you know, just do some really small adjustments here. But there's not really much that I need to do. I've found, you know, really great success here with Negative Lab Pro and getting images, especially color images. Once I figured out my scanning solution, which is why I'm making this video to share with you, once I figured that out, I found great success with Negative Lab Pro. And there you go. So that's my scanning workflow from start to finish. The most efficient way that I've found to digitalize my film negatives. Can get in, I can get a 36 exposure roll of 35mm done, like I said, in less than 5 minutes, and I can move on to the next one. So it takes that pain away from, you know, photographing with film, because for me, you know, using a flatbed scanner or using even you know, the digitalizer, the Lomo digitalizer is a great tool, but it took a lot longer because you're having to first cut them and then you're opening it up for every single strip of you know, 5 exposures or 6 exposures. So it just takes a lot more time. And so with this, 5 minutes I can be done, and I'm that much less hesitant to photograph on film. I'm that much less hesitant to press the button because you know, I'm not thinking like, oh boy, I got this whole process ahead of me. This is nice and quick, it's easy, it's efficient, great quality, and I'm really happy. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. This is my first YouTube video like this. I just thought that I would hop on and share and hopefully help you in some way. So thanks for checking out the video, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.